Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No young is me anymore. Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No young, no. Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No young is me anymore. Hello, everybody. We're bringing you Block Digest number 130 on Wednesday, October 3rd at block height 544,236. So what's going on, everybody? I just got done eating some tomatoes and triggering some carnivores.
Oh, man. Woo, yeah, man. No, I'm drinking my cup of coffee. It's definitely October, but I think we're about to have a weather change here. So, yeah, it's been all right. How's it going today, Janine?
Oktoberfest begins.
There's so many. October, there's Oktoberfest. And there's Halloween. So there's a lot of Octobers going on. You get scary, get stupid, or get sane.
And
Those
if
words mean nothing to you. You don't even drink beer.
Yeah, so I can still I can still dress up in like a dress and everything.
Doesn't matter. It's a superficial
Eat
details.
sausage.
It's about the beer. It's about the beer.
Nah. It's harvest time.
It's like, the beers. I think I'm definitely going to be checking out some, they got these specialty coffees of the spice. It's the pumpkin spice season, pumpkin spice brews or something.
And if I remember correctly, wasn't Halloween the day that Satoshi first posted about Bitcoin online?
I think it was back in 2008.
Yep.
I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, definitely Satoshi playing the dates right as far as the mischievous Bitcoin. But yeah, it's nice to get into October, but like I'm saying, it's still a little warm here, but we're about to get to a major temperature shift. So I've been running around trying to get ready for that and, get ready for that. And I think Shinobi's trying to run around and get his VPN under control. But we'll see. Oh, you did it. You did it. All right. So, yeah, man, what's the temperature like? Well, I don't want to. Yeah, you could say it's just hot as hell wherever you're at.
It's tomatoes. Everybody should eat tomatoes because they're delicious, and carnivory is stupid.
Yeah, man. Definitely going to catch up on some jokes like we were talking about before the show. Bunch of stuff just came out about all that vegan, anti-vegan, keto, anti-keto, and Dr. Roger Patrick. It's like my nutrition education.
Mm-hmm. All right, though. So let's dive into it. And this week we actually have time to do Bitcoin Optech, which we've been ignoring in the interest of actually trying to be under 2 hours. Super short one today. Bitcoin 0.17 is out. So be reckless. Upgrade immediately. In other news, 0.15.2 and 0.14.3 have been released with a patch for the inflation bug. So if for some weird reason you don't want to run 0.16, you can patch those now. Funny note, some troll went and exploited the bug on testnet. Mm-hmm. Caused a whole bunch of havoc with some fake Monopoly money. And yeah, it's really freaking annoying. Go to hell. Do you have any idea how much progress you disrupted, you trolly piece of shit? You're messing with developers trying to build shit. All right. Notable code changes. There's been some updates in a Python based test for Bitcoin Core. We LND has done a little RPC tweaking and readjusted the RPC calls for new addresses to ensure that they're using differentiation between pay to script hash SegWit and native SegWit. And then Sea Lightning has done some invoice changes for their RPC call as well. That's pretty much facilitate more information passing for the routing side of things. And that's your super short Optech for the week.
Heck yeah, man. It's good to just like see some more updates coming out. And from the Optech. But yeah, just like thinking about that bug, man, it's kind of crazy. They just like ran over testnet with that thing. And I think I need to do some upgrading myself as far as like my node needs some more disk space. I think I'm going to just go ahead and splurge for a second node and start trying this, like, having a couple of different clients as far as just like sitting around redundancy area. But I mean, also like I've just seen like some people, they have like, multiple either implementations or clients and or different versions just to kind of be on the safe side of things, build up that extra robust system.
Mm-hmm. Last quick mention wasn't really worthy being its own story, but some shitcoin named Pigeon Coin actually had the bug implemented too and had like a quarter's worth of the allowed supply printed out of thin air. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's where it's like, it's like these things can be, there's not enough mechanisms in there to sort of build up that redundancy to where it can't just like be taken over and inflated. There was a lot of nodes on the network and everything. So I mean, it just makes it more difficult. It's sucks for those guys. So I'm sorry to hear that, Pigeon guys.
Bitcoin is the sewer rat and Pigeon Coin is the flying rat.
All right. Let us dive into this first one. So I'm sure all of you remember many months ago, Siacoin got into a huge community debate after Bitmain announced, I think, like a few days or maybe a week before they actually started shipping them, that they had developed Siacoin ASICs that had been secretly developed after Obelisk, a company established by the Siacoin developers to develop ASICs for the network, had pretty much been publicly for months discussing their plans to roll out ASICs for the network. And a lot of the community was really pissed about this. And it was kind of in the wake of all of Bitmain's shenanigans during the UASF and the New York agreement. And a lot of the community pretty much just wanted to go fuck you and specifically fork the network so that it would brick Bitmain's ASICs, but still allow the Obelisk ASICs developed by the Siacoin devs to function properly. But after, a month or so of really heated debate, the network kind of just stayed how it was, and everybody decided that they weren't going to do that. And it seemed like they had made the rational choice and decided to let markets do what markets are supposed to do. But that is no longer the case. And the Siacoin team has recently put out a blog post saying that they are going to go through with this hard fork. And pretty much most of the post is just a long, rambling justification. But as a little bit of context right now, it's actually not Bitmain that is the majority ASIC manufacturer for the Siacoin network. It's Silicon. And based on the figures in this post, they are about 38%, I think it was, of the mining power on the network right now. And that's what they're actually mining themselves with, not just what they're producing. And so they kind of go through this long, rambling history of Obelisk being established and being some kind of big community effort, and go through a lot of the reasoning as to why they decided not to fork the network previously when Bitmain's announcement was first made. And after that, they start kind of rationalizing on how the community has been discussing things, and how the members of the community, air quotes, that were very against forking to brick Bitmain's ASICs have, air quote, left. And so they try to kind of paint this image that all of the people who were against this fork just kind of wandered off from the community, sold their coins, stopped being involved. It's, to me, this just reads like a horseshit rationalization of a narrative where they are trying to paint this picture of them appeasing people who were against this fork to pick and choose market winners. And they just left. So their arguments and their position don't matter anymore because we don't see them being active in the, air quote, community anymore. And so after this, they start going through a lot of the economics of being an ASIC manufacturer. And they point out that with the exception of Bitcoin, although I would argue semantically, Bitcoin is not that strong of an exception. It's just less exaggerated. But there is a monopoly of hardware manufacturing for pretty much every cryptocurrency out there with an ASIC. You know, Ethereum has the Unisilicon A10, Zcash the Unisilicon A9, Dash the Spoon Doolies SPX36, Decred apparently is dominated by a WhatsMiner, and they kind of just point this out and then go, this is just the economics of the situation. And they pretty much break down the development costs of an ASIC. You know, you're looking at anywhere between $5 to $8 million up front just to develop, and this is for 14 nanometer chips, you know, the design, the firmware, the getting everything ready for manufacturing. And so before you even put money into building the actual thing, you're already a few $1 million in the hole. And so they look at how this kind of informs profit margins on different devices. And, you know, you have to be able to recoup those costs. So that's going to inform how you price things and what your margins are. And they kind of look at, you know, the economics of this and how this kind of plays out in terms of competition. And in the middle here, before they go on to that, though, they start whining about Unisilicon, under their assumptions, having around 100% profit margin. And so in their words, Unisilicon can sell a miner and then build a miner to mine themselves. But to get back into the competition aspect, they pretty much start looking at a necessity for at least 50 to 100% profit margins for an ASIC that's going to come onto the market and obsolete everything on the market right now. And they start looking at the dynamics of, you know, a monopoly versus an upstart, and looking at the fact that for, you know, newer machines that are not built by an entrenched monopoly, you're looking more at like profit margins of 25%. And, you know, just to be able to undercut whatever monopoly player you're trying to underseed. And, you know, this is part of the dynamic is if you don't already have that dominant position, you don't have the large customer base, that's how you attract customers. You undercut. You sell your product at a lower margin. That's how you start attracting more customers. And this is just how markets work. Like this is it's reality. And they pretty much just start complaining about how this is playing out and how it's difficult to do this, and a monopoly arising is an unfair thing. And now this is where they kind of lose me here in being completely incoherent. They move on to discuss the incentives of ASIC mining versus GPU mining, and claim that even in a cryptocurrency that has a dominant ASIC manufacturer that has more than 50% of the hash rate, there hasn't been a 51% attack just because of the difference in incentives here. And ASIC is good for one, or in reality, maybe a few different coins, although there's always the dominant valuable coin that if something were to happen to it would destroy the value proposition of the ASIC. And so just having ASICs is a huge disincentive to do that, even for a majority player. Because if they destroy the value proposition of this cryptocurrency, then all of their assets are worthless. As opposed to GPU coins, which have been 51% attacked multiple times. Like I can't even keep track of them anymore. Attempts to defraud exchanges, because these are general purpose devices that can switch back and forth between any of the GPU mineable coins out there. And they even point at some instances of secret ASIC manufacturing, such as the Monero incident with Bitmain, where even though they had a huge majority of the hash rate, there was never a 51% attack. Like, this is part of the incentives. And see, like, I hope, like, listening to this, you're thinking the same thing I was when I first read this. Like, you started off complaining about a monopoly that isn't you, and then you go on to make the argument about how with ASICs, a monopoly effectively doesn't matter because there's still the incentive to not be a malicious actor. And so they kind of go on to this and they start talking about malicious monopolies. And really here is kind of my whole issue with this, and why I took the stance looking at this issue I did when it was first happening, is what's malicious? Like, how do you decide what is a healthy monopoly, an unhealthy monopoly, a bad actor or a good actor? Well, is your network being attacked? No. Then there is no malicious actor to the point where there is any reason to even consider altering consensus rules regarding the proof of work. The proof of work algorithm is the bedrock foundation of any proof of work cryptocurrency. And the minute you start playing with the stability and the expectation of consistency in that, you're destabilizing the entire root of all of the incentives that keep a network like that functioning. And so pretty much they just kind of weave around here and start discussing manufacturers who mine themselves versus manufacturers who don't mine. And again, this is just how markets work. If you produce something, that's your property. If a manufacturer wants to produce their own chips and mine themselves, well, too bad. That's none of your business. It's their property. If they want to sell it on the open market, if they want to plug it into a power source in their own warehouses and mine yourself, it's none of your fucking business. It's not your property. It's theirs. And this entire rationale that they're weaving through is pretty much just them justifying the attitude that we are going to pick market winners and losers. We are not going to allow the free market to actually do what it does and pretty much just play out. And if it satisfies what consumers or users want, it will succeed. And if it doesn't, then it won't. Like, there is a reason that in a silicon is the dominant manufacturer on this network. They have produced the best product, the cheapest product that people want to buy. And what they do with those profits is no one else's business. And so I hope you can see kind of where this is going here, without really pointing to any kind of malicious activity whatsoever, by drawing this line between a manufacturer that mines with their own product and a manufacturer that doesn't mine with their own product. They can now point at Siacoin with 38% of the hash rate and go, you are malicious simply for existing and mining on this network because you're producing the chips that you're mining with instead of buying them from someone else. And so at the very end here, they pretty much wind down with, we're going to brick Siacoin's and Bitmain's ASICs. And if you remember from when this story first happened, when this became a big topic of debate in the Siacoin community, Obelisk had done what Luke Jr. has been screaming at ASIC manufacturers to do for years, and included an extra circuit in their equipment so that they can alter the proof of work in a way that bricks other ASICs but still leaves theirs functional. And so they're going to pretty much establish themselves as a monopoly. They have decided because another company is doing something that they don't approve of, they're going to pretty much try to centrally plan the economy and bankrupt, well not literally bankrupt. Siacoin produces a lot of miners for a lot of different networks, but destroy this product line because we don't like the fact that it even exists, despite the fact it's not being used for anything actually malicious. The people engaged in producing it and using it aren't doing anything malicious. We just don't like that you have beaten us in this market. So we're going to brick your shit and guarantee that we're the only ones with a miner that works. And they've even towards the end of this stated that they have designs for a second ASIC. And if somebody else, after this hard fork goes through and everybody's hardware except theirs is bricked, decide to start manufacturing ASICs and become a dominant, successful participant in the market again, they'll brick it again and just fucking tape out these new ASICs that they're fucking keeping secret and under the hood for right now. And so, like this frankly is going to, in my opinion, just completely destroy this currency. Like the developers who have started their own ASIC manufacturing company have just rationalized in the most absurd, like sophist way possible that somebody succeeded better in the market than us. So we're just going to play market planner. We're going to guarantee that we're the only monopoly producing ASICs for these coins right now. And if somebody else starts producing them later, we will decide if they are not allowed to participate in this market. I mean, like it's fucking absurd. Like I really suggest that, after the show today, everybody actually go through and read this entire post in their own words. But it's just sophistry. Like it's just them deciding we don't like this company, so fuck you. We are going to destroy the value of everything you've produced because you succeeded in the market where we do not. And this is the antithesis of everything that this fucking space is supposed to be. It is supposed to be completely free, voluntary markets. Well, they beat you in that market. You should deal with it and accept the fact that they're providing security for your network.
Yeah, man. This seems to be like just one of those, I don't know, those evolutions where it's like eventually you kind of bump into ASICs. And I mean, with the price rise of last year, we started to see it more and more on all these different. But, it does kind of remind me a little bit whenever I was first getting in and everybody was just, screaming about Bitmain, having too much hash rate in China, and we should do this, and it took a while for that the market to really kind of play out on all that. And I think it's incredible, like the way that it played out with Bitcoin, because there was no influence it. I mean, there was all these different incentives that got people working together, but over time it was the markets that sort of been deciding. But it is like this weird moment in time where we're seeing like these developers trying to fork away from these miners, and you've seen that with the Monero community, with the Zcash community, and it's kind of curious as to, it's like the developers came together. We said we're going to do this, and then a miner and their hardware development comes in, and they say, well, this kind of looks like it's wrecking our roadmap as far as the way we wanted Obelisk or whoever to be the producing the most efficient hardware for X amount of time. And you try to play that stuff out like ahead of time and try to enforce that in your ecosystem, then it's just clear evidence that there's people trying to take over the decision of the market and say, well, we don't like the fact that these new guys came in with their design and it's more efficient. And we kind of had this idea that we were going to be on the top game for, we're going to fork away from this. And it does sound kind of shady with the way that they were all, the community against that fork just kind of disappeared, because I remember last year it was like Bitmain was producing those and Obelisk was putting theirs out, and so there was this big to do about whether or not to fork it, and it seemed like the community kind of came together there and said we're not, and we're going to just let this evolve over time. Now that this new guy comes into the market and they just get freaked out and say, well, we're going to fork away from this. I mean, it's certainly, like you're saying, it's not letting the market decide. It's just like, I could kind of see it as like, this is just the added complexity you add to all these different tokens and coins, where it's like, there's an incentive there to mine it. And so when there's an incentive to mine it, the hardware gets created. And then a lot of these, we could say like 95%, there's a clearly defined like roadmap of like, basically like the underpants gnomes, like, we're going to create a token, we're going to pitch the token, and then we're going to profit. And, there's enough value add to where with their own incentive of like, well, we're going to create the hardware to start securing this network. And, that kind of throws them. But it's like, this is just like part of the evolution of this space. And I guess where we're at in time, it's a weird moment where all these forks, like, it used to be like, oh, well, this chain's better than that chain, where now it's like, okay, well, which part of the chain are you with? Are you with the side of the chain progressive development that's tenable, or are you going with the side that's scalable right now and, to a certain extent, or do you want the guys that are just behind the miners? Or it's become a lot where before it was like, I like this monetary policy better than that monetary policy, or I think it should be quicker and not as slow. And where now it's like, I think it should be quicker. And I also think that the developer of the quicker team is to go. It's all these added layers of complexity, and it's really just sort of fleshing out all these third parties and sort of showing their incentives, I guess, their what their intentions are, for sure. So I mean, like all this kind of like a full reversal from last year. I saw you had posted this up on the news desk. I definitely need to read through that blog, because it sounds like things are moving over there in Siacoin in a direction I didn't know about.
Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is horseshit too. I mean, like they claim that there's no dissent from this and this has consensus. You just go on the r/Siacoin. There's a mega thread for it, and there is a very big amount of people considering the side of the thread going, what the hell are you doing this for? Like, what do you mean? Like, what did in a silicon do that is malicious? Like, how is this going to hurt them? They've already sold the miners they've sold. They've made their money. They've accumulated this coin. How is this going to hurt them? All this is going to do is hurt people who bought these pieces of equipment to support this network. Like did this rationale? This is horseshit. Like this is point blank a development team deciding they're going to brick other people's hardware so that they can have the monopoly for their coin. Like that's all it is, point blank. And like the rationalization is absurd. Like, oh well, if a manufacturer mines with their own equipment, that's malicious. No, I mean Bitmain. Like, I think that their declarations of their hash rate is horseshit, and they're probably running double-digit percentage of the equipment on the network. I don't care. They can do that however long they want. If they're not actually attacking the network, then they're providing security for it. Like DPW Holdings and their Anteater from their subsidiary, like by everything I've seen from that product so far, it seems like they're pretty much just going to build it to mine with themselves. I have not seen anything really that indicates they're going to sell that on the consumer market. And there are other manufacturers of ASICs that are not publicly known that literally just produce chips to mine themselves. So what? They're providing security for the network, and they have a huge incentive to not attack that because they've invested millions and millions of dollars into designing and manufacturing this equipment. And like, frankly, if 10 or 20 years from now, we wind up in a place where literally the only people mining are people producing their own chips to mine, so what? If it's distributed enough, and if they have an incentive to mine honestly, then the system is working and it is being guaranteed secure. That's all that matters. And this Siacoin fork is nothing but protectionist market planning horseshit that's attempting to rationalize it with the meme of the community. There is no the community when you're talking about a cryptocurrency. There are people who hold the cryptocurrency. That's it. There is no such thing as a homogenous community with a money. That's like saying that everybody who uses the US dollar has the same culture and the same attitude for things, and we all communicate in a coherent group. And that's nonsense. Like, that's just intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think you're right on the fact that if they go through with this, it'll probably shatter any sort of market confidence that was building up there, that they could confidently develop hardware based around that. But if that's what they want to do, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. All right, that sound is a trigger for a story switch. Go, Janine.
All right, so once again, we are going to be talking about Shapeshift, because on episode 122.5, which was kind of a weird one, it was like in between two episodes, Shinobi and I covered the fact that Shapeshift recently decided to discard their accountless exchange model and implement KYC for all of their users, which was announced publicly on September 6th and was supposed to go into effect on October 1st, which is 2 days ago. I haven't checked whether that's actually the case, but probably will happen very soon. And a lot of people had suspicions from the beginning when that was announced that, of course, they were not all quashed at all by Eric Voorhees, that Shapeshift were doing this because of regulatory pressure. And Eric described KYC as, quote, an imposition. He described it as coercive. And he also used the word forced a few times, both in tweets and in an interview with CoinDesk, which strangely was trying to convince us that there was no regulatory pressure involved, that we were all speculating. But of course, I called bullshit on that. And at the end of September, we found out that there was something going on behind the scenes, which was probably influencing Shapeshift's decisions in that regard. You may have seen that on September 28th, just less than a week ago, Justin Sheck and Shane Shiflett published an article in the Wall Street Journal titled "How Dirty Money Disappears into the Black Hole of Cryptocurrency," where they accused Shapeshift of being, quote, the largest recipient of suspected criminal proceeds from a parade of suspected criminals taking advantage of Shapeshift services over the period of 2 years. I just want to point out, of course, that, well, the Wall Street Journal often paywalls their articles, but if you want to read the thing in full, it is archived in the links below because, paywalls suck. And so the Wall Street Journal journalists claim in this article that the parade of criminals consisted of supposed North Korean hackers involved in the WannaCry ransomware attack, and that the criminal proceeds was Bitcoin that they then converted into Monero by using Shapeshift, because Shapeshift is the crypto-to-crypto exchange. And in total, based on a, quote, computer program, who knows what that looks like, they apparently built to track transactions related to, quote, suspected and, quote, alleged crimes. Notice how many keywords all of these qualifying keywords, they use them quite frequently. They never just say actual criminals or crimes. They say suspected or alleged, which is kind of a bullshit word, because who is making the allegations and who actually, who is making the connection between any transaction and an actual crime? That is a big question in itself, because how do you do that? You have to be using some kind of surveillance software. You have to be talking to law enforcement who are aware of crimes with these transactions. And they never actually share any of the data for these claims. They don't point to specific transactions. They don't show the computer program that they supposedly use. They just say that they source their information from a combination of Etherscam database, Bitcoin Who's Who reports, a London-based blockchain forensics company called Elliptic, blockchain.info, and etherscan.io, and a lot of their quotes from government officials who are saying scary things about, I believe there was something about, I'm going to actually go find it really quick. It was a quote about how if you run too many red lights, eventually you get ticketed or something like that. All of these anonymous quotes from government officials or regulators are all anonymous. So that's fun. And on October 1st, Eric Voorhees responded to the Wall Street Journal through the Shapeshift blog, and he states that these journalists reached out to us 5 months ago asking for friendly assistance on a piece about the cryptocurrency industry in general. A lot of this stuff is like paraphrased. It's not a direct quote, but it's like pieces of quotes from different sentences. And that the journalists omitted the majority of what they discussed over that extended period of time. For he says that this omitted or misrepresented information includes that even if the $9 million figure was true, like basically they claim that $9 million was money laundered through Shapeshift, that would only consist of 0.15% of Shapeshift's exchange volume during the described period. So their claim that it's like a honey bed of crime would be exaggerating. It's a very small percentage. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, $9 million is nothing compared to the amount of money laundering that's going through, banks, the average bank, on a daily basis. He also says that we have a strong record of complying with law enforcement requests, providing valuable assistance in over 30 investigations in 13 different countries all over the world. We work with other exchanges on an almost daily basis to identify and block thieves and criminals through a self-policing group Shapeshift created to protect the users and industry. Oh, I wonder what that's talking about, and couldn't possibly be maybe the Blockchain Alliance? Who knows? They also say, no surprise there, we block entire countries on the sanctions list. Of course they do. We have an internal anti-money laundering program that uses blockchain forensics that are far more advanced and we would argue effective than asking someone for their name and address. And he also says, finally, that we blacklist suspicious addresses upon learning of them. And so he argues, based on that last point, that the Wall Street Journal reporters withheld information for months about suspicious accounts in order to build the story, rather than communicating it to the appropriate exchanges and Shapeshift immediately, or so that Shapeshift and the other exchanges could freeze or block the funds. It is likely victims of these thefts lost their chance to recoup some of the funds due to this opportunism. He also provides an example of how these reporters misread blockchain data and hence overestimated the scale of the illicit transactions, which does not surprise me at all, considering all of their qualifying language like suspected, alleged, apparent, etc. Even in a public tweet that one of the journalists made, Shane Shiflett, he says that they traced more than 12 million transactions connected to potentially criminal wallets. So potentially, again, another qualifying word. And as I also suspected, the Wall Street Journal, according to Voorhees, says that they were unwilling or unable to send their requested transaction data necessary for us to do a more fulsome analysis of their assertions. And finally, Voorhees notes several ways at the end of the post in which Shapeshift has an industry-leading compliance program, which includes, obviously, their newly implemented mandatory KYC policy, which they tweeted a reminder about on the same day that this article was published. So my best guess for what happened over the past month or 2 months or so, perhaps, is kind of suggested by all of the quotes that they included from law enforcement in the investigation. My guess is they were probably passing a lot of the information along to these US regulators and others, and those US regulators probably decided to put pressure on Shapeshift based on these inflated figures to enforce KYC on the platform, even though, as Voorhees very plainly now admits, they were already using many censorship tactics, which should have fulfilled at least the current regulatory landscape especially for non-fiat exchanges. And because a lot of the bricks and mortar operations were occurring in the United States and Colorado, even though, as everyone has been saying, there really is no clear regulation on how this kind of stuff applies to non-fiat exchanges, they decided to comply anyway and shapeshift away from their principles rather than put up a fight. And at the very least, Voorhees put out a red flag with some of his tweets on the day that the KYC stuff was announced. So nobody really bought into this claim that it was all about de-risking or some other bullshit. It's just covering their ass, and that's all it is. But once again, the reason I covered this is because it was an opportunity for me to expand my own blacklist of horrible journalists that I never want to talk to, because there's few things that make it more obvious that you're just acting as a propaganda agent of the state than to refuse to publish the data and analysis, which is the crux of your so-called investigation. So great job, Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this whole thing to me just looks like like they were being fed or collaborating with some law enforcement agency to build this up, pressure Shapeshift, and then smear them publicly instead of just reporting something so that they can deal with it. And, Shapeshift has, again, Eric Voorhees is a piece of shit, and he has been a consistent manipulative actor in this space. But, they have been unbelievably open about their proactive actions in terms of dealing with cryptocurrency thefts, preventing money from being shifted through their exchange, working they've been open about all this for a long time. And this is just another example of the mainstream media completely twisting and manipulating shit to paint this seedy image of this ecosystem. And I mean, as much as I despise Eric, he's entirely right in that blog post. Every point he made is dead on. And all the Wall Street Journal did is literally just keep secret what they thought was a criminal activity to accuse Shapeshift of being complicit in it instead of informing them so that they could act on it. And I mean, my personal feelings about issues like KYC aside, that's just the level of unethical behavior in that action is just absurd.
Yeah, I saw this story, and it's one of those things where, you're in the weeds and you're trying to look through all of it to see the forest. And it's I feel for this whole Shapeshift, like going to KYC, like, here in Colorado, I was at a meetup, and when that was like, I went to this meetup right after that had happened, and it was a big topic of discussion, and a lot of people, they're like, we know Eric, and like that just doesn't sound like something Eric would want to do, and I know Colorado now. I've been here for a couple of years, and I know also just this country and the way that it produces information and tries to push different narratives and push different people into different things. And yeah, Colorado really had a push against the pharmaceutical lobby and the drug war lobby, all these guys to not legalize cannabis and not do that. And but they eventually did it. And I know that with this whole thing just recently, just like while it was all sort of breaking, right there at September 21st, Colorado pushed out some positive guidelines for crypto to crypto exchanges not apply for money transmitter licensing, which I think the money transmitter licensing was one of the major things that was making these exchanges look like on ramps, off ramps, to where they had to KYC everyone. And so it's like, while it's playing out, it's hard to figure. I mean, it's like maybe it's like Eric's like on the cusp of like a red line there, where he's trying to mind his legal P's and Q's, but at the same time fight back with this the way that the lobbying system works in the current government, and trying to actually get things more favorable for just Colorado, hopefully. I mean, but it's one of these stories. It's aggravating because it just kind of really is an epitome of just like the way that the narrative is formed and the way that people's opinions are manipulated. It's and it's just not fun to talk about KYC, and AML, and how it's just getting implemented everywhere, and especially places you just didn't think you'd see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I want to take us along to the next one, Rick. This is looking like, schedule. We're bad at this.
Well, we just get into some of these and we let go of the time, but that's all right, because I think this first one's going to go by really quickly. There was an incident there in France where an agent working for the General Internal Security, or the DGSI, was indicted last Wednesday and taken into custody after allegedly selling confidential information on economics and potentially falsifying administrative documents, which this sensitive unit that was close to members of organized crime as well as specialists in economics. And at this time, none of these groups are to be labeled quote unquote terrorist organizations, which I think that if there was that, we would see the headlines everywhere. For right now, it's just kind of trying to translate this story down, because it was not really that widely reported on yet. I mean, I think CoinDesk touched on it, and that was it so far from last night. But interested to know who some of these specialists in economics are that they're working with, because I certainly know that they work with what I would consider a terrorist organization, but whatever. So some of the documents he pulled from the internal police system were being traced, and this is how he got caught. Members of the Central Directorate of the Judicial Police, which is another unit in France, first discovered the leaks, and then members of the DGSI were able to track all of his code. More specifically, the agency traced the origin of the queried files. It is unclear how much information was sold or how much the agent made in Bitcoin. That's pretty funny. If convicted, the agent faces 7 years in prison and a potential €100,000 fine. And we'll have to wait, to see how the story pans out. But I wouldn't be too surprised if this guy gets a portion of that sentence with the fine. At least he stashed away some open dimes somewhere, to where you get out of prison at a certain point in time, you'd be pretty loaded. But there was this little story going on in France with some dark operators, some undercover agents collaborating, getting together, and apparently he was arrested there in France or detained. Did y'all have any comments on this story?
Not really much. I mean, it's just this kind of inevitable. People are going to start looking to use cryptocurrencies for things like this. I mean, dealing with cash or bank transfers that can be seized or reversed like that. At the end of the day, I mean, people do shit like this, and I would assume the guys taking the risk are going to want some form of money that can't just be arbitrarily seized.
Yeah, and whenever you're working with that and you got the power of the current way that the law enforcement and all that sort of operates, I mean, it's hard to walk away from that, I imagine, without sort of trying to do this or that. So anyway, yeah, that story was kind of one of those where I grabbed it and I was like, man, there's nothing to this. But that's why I picked up this other story, because I think there's like a little bit of meat here, maybe where we could actually discuss. So Ripple had another swell conference, and they last year they had Ben Bernanke as their keynote, and this year Bill Clinton was their keynote to take the stage. So in the show notes from CoinDesk, and the story isn't really discussing what Clinton said, but more what the message Ripple is sending. And just shout out to Michael Krieger for David Floyd for the write-up for CoinDesk. So Mr. Clinton was sending a message on Ripple's behalf by simply appearing on stage. Specifically, the company was saying Ripple is the kind of Clinton to speak. The article then goes into the 2016 election and the meme of paid Clinton speeches and that close connection to Wall Street and K Street that we all kind of saw last in 2016. When listening, not familiar with K Street, this is where all these lobbying firms' headquarters are, and they're the ones that are paying these legislators and the people that are writing the laws. So the article goes back and points rhetoric on being a thriving emerging fintech company, while the reality is they are just another cryptocurrency looking for a use case. Also, there's the context that Ripple is selling millions worth of XRP, would call an unregulated security, to the point of lawsuits. But of course, all that XRP owned by Ripple was gifted to them, so they're trying to push back on that. And also, they're pushing back on this idea of the IC having anything to do with them, based on Bill Clinton sitting on stage telling the market we aren't associated with unregulated securities or Ponzi schemes. I suppose that's what Mr. Clinton tells the traditional that, but not only that, but within the context of the 2016 election, WikiLeaks' role in forming that election, and how Bitcoin and cypherpunks helped WikiLeaks, Mr. Clinton's paid speech is another clear organization has nothing to do with the sorts of cypherpunks and anarcho-capitalists who donate Bitcoin to WikiLeaks. Ripple's board includes a former co-president of Morgan Stanley, a former of financial services who created the New York State cryptocurrency regulation, a former State Department official who now runs a DC Silicon Valley consulting firm with 2 former cabinet members, and a former White House advisor, an official who served in the Clinton and Obama administrations. Ripple's choice to book Bill Clinton to speak is entirely consistent with its lobbying efforts, its taste in board members, and all the other ways in which it aims to project an ability. I like that. Yeah, that was the quote directly from the article there. Michael Krieger on Liberty Blitz on Twitter called XRP the Shyster coin. I think, I'm going to start echoing that. We can clearly see who they are appealing to, and business as usual to reach that goal. And Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse said on stage at this swell event, quote, "It wasn't about replacing banks. There's an opportunity to be a builder and a partner with the industry," which, it's just it's like one of these things where, you know, we always talk about Ripple and XRP and how scammy it is, but yeah, really, it's like it's just guys are making their way into this. I mean, they've been here, and like we kind of talk about, yeah, it's like maybe there's some people that are, you know, trying to get some information out of Shapeshift, or you know, maybe there's some people working behind the scenes, and Ripple is just doing it right in front of our face, and it's something where, like, you know, I know we kind of like puke about it, and every time I hear Ripple discussed, it's like, oh, it's such a joke, but I mean, like, I don't even know, thinking about it, it's like a joke. I mean, like, it is a joke that they keep appealing to the traditional system, but that system can still wield a pretty powerful thing. I mean, like, we've seen some commercial, you know, companies saying that they're going to be RP because of their, you know, long arms within this current construct. And yeah, I think maybe we should be taking it more of like the threat that it really is. And like, you know, I mean, not a threat of like that much of a threat. It's just like the threat of what it could do to people on the ground if you know, people are kind of coaxed into this and they just keep following it along. It's like it's like money you're spending to go to lobbyists just keep paying out. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Did you guys have any comment on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Ripple is being successful in any sense, really. I mean, like the three companies that they announced are going to be using XRapid at the conference are just like three completely random, unknown like banks and like a one credit union. And like all of the major banks and firms they've tried to establish relationships with have just like totally walked back. Like, no, this isn't deployed. Like, this was just a pilot program, like we saw with Western Union after they kept trying to pump that up. Like, they have not actually been able to engage and get any serious use, you know, from any major financial institution except SBI in Japan. And like even them, like SBI has been, you know, dealing with Ripple for a while for international money transfers, but they literally just partnered with BitPesa to use Bitcoin for international remittances. So I mean, that I think should tell you something really important. Like one of the biggest banks that they've actually established some decent relationship with is now building a product with a Bitcoin company to use Bitcoin for international remittances, not Ripple. And, you know, as far as Bill Clinton, like, I mean, this is, you know, I'm sure I've said this a few times on air, but like, this is just them flailing around and going, fuck it. We're just going to try to appeal to the left wing and the liberals because all of the conservatives or libertarians are just calling us out on our bullshit left and right. And it's like they realize like there's no way for them to build any kind of support or liquidity base in that community because it's just not going to happen. Like, they're jumping in bed with regulators, appealing to central banks. Like, it's so fuck it. Like, what option do they have? Try to appeal to the other side.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that.
Janine, come on.
So,
You don't even have a Clinton joke?
yeah, what's in there?
I did not have relations with that illegal security.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't have a particular I think we've already made that joke before. I don't remember when we made it. I think it was when it was announced that Bill Clinton was going to be a speaker. We made that joke.
Yeah, actually, I do think you're
Yeah.
right.
I
Old jokes
remember
coming back around.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to point out, like, all of this, I don't know, I don't know, I mean, Bill Clinton is just desperate because he has apparently a lot of expenses, you know, he has to keep doing all these speeches, makes hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. I think that was pointed out when he was chosen as a speaker. But I mean, these people, like, they do speeches and they don't have any ethical boundaries. I mean, they constantly talk to people as if they can relate to the average person, but they don't. I mean, Clinton does speeches for all of the major banks. She was doing that years ago. She and her family hangs out with the Trump family. Like, there's not actually a lot of difference between these people. They pretend to be divided on their politics, but actually they're all just the same at the end. They're all part of an elite class. And so it does not surprise me that the elite class would choose to, go with a coin that basically wants to serve the banks. Doesn't surprise me.
Like you're saying, it's a joke. But in another joke, what's going on with these Brave guys?
Yeah, so if you guys have seen, I think it was episode 65 and 123, you probably know that I have a very mixed perspective on Brave and the company, like Brave, the company, which is headed by Brendan Eich. And 2 days ago, they shared on their blog that Eich has written, quote, to the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation to present the case for GDPR-like data protection standards in the United States. And he says in the letter to Chairman Thune, I think, and Ranking Member Nelson from that committee that, quote, I view the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, as a great leveler. The GDPR establishes the conditions that will allow young, innovative companies like Brave to flourish. He argues that, quote, GDPR-like standards will soon apply to civil and commercial use of personal data in major parts of the world, and therefore a common global standard would reduce friction and uncertainty. He goes on to detail issues with the online advertising industry, specifically political microtargeting, and offers to, quote, provide further information or to meet and brief you to assist in your deliberations, which I must admit, cozying up to regulators is probably a good move for a guy who did an ICO last year that may be of questionable legal status. So good go there. Now, I don't have enough of a legal background to give a broad evaluation on whether the GDPR is even a good legal framework for data protection. That is in the context of a very status reality where our privacy is protected by soft laws and not hard crypto. But while I was researching my latest blog post titled Consent and Consensus, I came across an interview with a privacy researcher, Nissenbaum, and she had some misgivings, you could say, about whether the GDPR, even from a basis of, adding consent structures or consent mechanisms to the internet, is even enough. I'm going to open that really quick because I didn't have it open. But basically, she says that what the GDPR ended up doing, she says, we're now constantly seeing pop-ups that say, hey, we use cookies. Click here. This doesn't help. You have no idea what you're doing, what you're consenting to. A meaningful choice would be to say, I'm okay that you're using cookies to track me, or I don't want to be tracked but still want to enjoy the service, or it's fine to use cookies for this particular transaction, but throw unnecessary data out and never share with others. But none of these choices are provided. So in what sense is this a matter of choosing versus picking? And I think that was very good because I honestly, I really haven't seen that much of a difference with GDPR. I mean, it was a thing that was supposed to, I don't know, give us a lot more power over our data, but I don't really see that much difference. And probably the reason why is because unlike Brendan Eich's claim that this benefits smaller and newer players, it actually just helped the incumbents who obviously have access to a lot of legal resources to either figure out how to get around the GDPR or how to, implement it in the simplest way possible, and then, get it deployed across all of their infrastructure, which is not something that a lot of smaller businesses and companies can do. So I don't actually see how that really helps smaller players at all. And another thing that I came across while researching my blog post is that apparently, as many of you know, the kind of accepted digital age of consent, you could call it, has for the longest time just been 13 years of age. So basically, when you become a teenager, you're able to, I mean, I don't know entirely what the limits are on it, but when you become 13, you're able to, for example, create a Facebook account. But of course, you know, a lot of people created their Facebook accounts when they were before the age of 13 years old. If they were, you know, under the age of 13 when Facebook came around, a lot of them were not 13, which is easy because Facebook and a lot of these companies don't actually check what your age is. They just make you affirm what your age is. And apparently, what the GDPR regulation wants to do, I'm not sure how much it's been actually contested yet, but one of the things that they want to suggest is that the digital age of consent gets raised to 16 years old, which, I mean, if you read my post, that's actually kind of aligning with the age of sexual consent, which is kind of weird. In most of the world, at least it's around 16. And so that's going to be interesting because, I mean, I include a link to an article that kind of looks at whether that's a good idea. And one of the things I keep seeing, one of the criticisms is that if you basically just move up the threshold to 16, you're not actually going to see, like, because it's promoted as we're going to, I don't know, protect children or something, but all websites are going to do is they're going to say, well, you have to affirm that you're 16 to use this website, and a lot of kids are going to affirm that even if they're not that age, and so their data is going to get collected anyway, and the websites don't actually check what your age is, so you're just going to get more of the same thing, which is kids and teenagers lying about their age in order to use a website, unless all of these websites start doing KYC. Oh god, that would be fun. So yeah, that was an interesting thing that I was not aware of beforehand about the GDPR. I did not know that they were planning to raise the age of digital consent. Now, apparently, as an EU-wide thing, they are going to recommend that they raise it to 16, though apparently individual states in the EU will be able to reduce it to anywhere between 13 and 16. So it's not mandatory, it's just they're going to recommend that. But still, was not really aware that they were planning to change that.
Yeah, I think like this whole thing is just it's horseshit. I mean, like one, like you said, this does nothing but actually make it harder for startups because they now have to get engineers to comply with this. They have to specifically re-architect their system to comply with this. They need to bring on lawyers to navigate all of this shit. Like it raises barriers to entry. It doesn't lower them. And then second, like you also said, like it's pointless. Like if you want to protect your privacy, do it with technology. All laws like this do is just put the government more in control of who can and can't offer services on the internet. I mean, as privacy conscious as I am, I'm sorry, but you agree to give somebody your data, that's a voluntary exchange and tough shit. Deal with it. And then like not to mention like the implications of the right to forget nonsense. I mean, that is a slippery slope. Like when is it okay to just delete something off of the internet because you don't want it being there? What kind of effect does that have on society where somebody can just claim information that voluntarily was exchanged with somebody else has to be removed now because that's your air quote property? Like how far does that go?
I mean, in my blog post, I actually analyzed an incident where that happened, where Gavin Wood had a very questionable story published on one of his old websites, and I don't know what mechanism or argument he or an associate of his used to get it removed, but he was able to get it removed from the Internet Archive, which I think I mean, that defeats the purpose of the Internet Archive, which a lot of people use to preserve, content that could possibly be very revealing and important about how things that people have done in the past or things that people have said in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if the right to be forgotten wasn't part of that or was part of that, because obviously Wood is he's from the UK, so they won't be in Europe much longer if they actually leave, but he's in the European area, so he might have used that justification. But luckily, some archives don't comply with that, so there's still a record of it, and you can read it.
But yeah, like this just reeks to me of Brendan Eich pathetically flailing around and going, Congress, stop these companies so that people will use my product instead, despite the fact that I'm an unethical scumbag who pretty much just collects money on other people's behalf, even if they're going to come get it or not, and keep it if they don't. And I hope he hears me say that too. All right, though. No more comments on this one?
No. I would just say that all of the legislators who are demonizing the use of encryption, guess what? That's one of the most important data protection tools you have out there, and a lot more cost effective than these entire legal frameworks, which are probably not going to work.
My losers.
All right, though. Let's jump into another punching bag. Coinbase dropping a blog release. Yeah. Improving Bitcoin reliability through child pays for parent. Yeah. Let's look at how hilarious this shit is. Okay. So at Coinbase, we strive to be the most trusted and easiest to use crypto company in the world. Okay.
Right.
Sending cryptocurrency today can be difficult. Transaction fees are volatile and unpredictable, which can result in significant swings in the amount of time it takes for a transaction to be confirmed. As a result of this, we've had many days here at Coinbase where some users' transactions would get stuck due to fee rate spikes and general Bitcoin network congestion, which peaked in December 2017. First and foremost, this gives our users a frustrating experience because it takes longer than expected for their transactions to arrive. Second, it means that engineers at Coinbase are getting paged frequently to investigate a situation that is mostly out of their control. Horseshit! 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 Hey, does everybody remember back during December 2017 when Coinbase went down and wasn't processing withdrawals, that they weren't batching for a few hours, and the increase in transactions in the mempool dropped by 80%? 80% of the growth in the mempool during that entire fee spike was Coinbase and their retarded system engineering, not batching anything, spamming the entire network with individual withdrawals for each and every customer, mostly out of their control. Can you be more full of shit?
And related to the last story, they were also the reason why Brave stopped using Bitcoin. I did that report. It's in what episode was it? 123? Yes, 123 if you want to hear about that.
So yeah, Coinbase, you're full of shit. And pretty much the entire rest of the post is just explaining child pays for parent like you're a retard. What if you spend a transaction from an unconfirmed transaction, miners will average the fee across both of them and confirm both? What? Hold on. Whoa, wait a minute. You mean after you spent over a month literally spamming the shit out of the entire network and causing a large chunk of that spike in fees directly yourselves, you finally realize that you can use something that's existed for years to speed up customers' transactions? Great job, Coinbase. Great fucking job. What is it at the end here? How did they put this? sorry, it's like a page and a half of explaining something that takes one sentence to explain. The child pays for parent feature is a great example of our daily work on crypto technologies, as well as the interesting challenges of complex distributed systems.
It makes it sound like they invented it.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like this is a complete joke. This is literally Coinbase trying to whitewash history and remove any of their responsibility in the insane spike in fees, acting like this is some marvelous development that they can use something that's existed for years in the protocol. And like, are you kidding me? Like this is literally something that you could probably write in like 100 lines of Python. Check transaction. Have blocks gone by? You have a counter for blocks. Is it confirmed yet? No. Make a new transaction. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, trying to paint this as some amazing feature that came out of daily research and work. You could have, like, a fucking 16-year-old could have written a Python script for this and deployed it. And it took you almost a year since you finally realized, oh shit, we should be batching transactions, something that developers have been telling businesses to do since like 2013, something that almost every responsible business in this ecosystem has done for years. That you can do this? Like, who the fuck do you think you're kidding?
Also, breaking news, apparently the presidential national alert system just went off. So a moment of silence for all the poor U.S. phones that might have just received some dick pics. Very sad.
Nope, it's broke. It's not working.
You didn't get it? Man, yeah. Yeah, the alert came through. But yeah, another alert came through last night when I was reading this blog post. I was like, man, I've read this like back in 2014, 2015 when I was first getting into Bitcoin. I was starting to figure out all about this programmable money thing. It's like, it's like this is Coinbase. It's like these are the people. I mean, yeah, you saw about that stupid thing with the Brave API and the fee rise and the mempool, and it's just like their ridiculous stuff with Bcash. I don't even understand. Like, I guess they put this out just thinking like we got to put out some sort of a thing that says that we're trying to improve efficiencies, but this one really kind of just showed their stupidity. I felt like it's just like, hey, here's our cards. We don't know shit yet. I mean, we're still figuring this game out.
My favorite is still all of the wallets who are still coming out with statements that they're adding SegWit like in the last few months. It's like, guys, really, SegWit? It took you more than a year? Really?
Yep, but let's give a round of applause to the idiots sitting on billions of dollars just figuring out the basics now. All right. So, next up, BitMEX has recently released a report that I think is going to disappoint a lot of people who want to see Ethereum burn and die. So they have been following, along with token analysis, the balances of most of the major Ethereum ICOs and kind of tracking their balances. And so this paints a picture that is not really what a lot of people such as myself wanted to hear. So in this analysis, they've kind of separated EOS from all of the other ones just because of the insane amount of Ethereum that they raised versus all the other projects. But pretty much the gist of it is, they actually did pretty well. And I don't think we're going to see the crazy death spiral of ICOs dumping because it kind of already happened. So EOS raised 7.2 million Ethereum, which is around 3.8 $3.8 billion. So the amount of EOS sold, or Ethereum sold by EOS, is around 7.2 million Ethereum for around $3.8 billion. They pretty much just dumped it periodically on the market during the actual ICOs. So they pretty much walked off with about exactly as much as they raised in terms of US dollars. Now, all the other projects raised around 7.9 million Ethereum, or averaged out. So this was pretty much done by looking at the average prices of Ethereum over the course of the ICO raise periods, around $1.6 billion. The other projects sold 4.1 million Ethereum for around $1.5 billion. So to really kind of put that in perspective, they only sold about half of the Ethereum that they raised in net, all of the other ICO projects besides EOS, and walked away with about as much as that was worth, or as much fiat as the total amount of Ethereum that they raised was worth at the time that they raised it. So, yeah, we're kind of looking at the exact opposite picture that a lot of people of myself were speculating with in terms of what would really happen with the Ethereum market. And there's actually a few graphs in this report that kind of break things down individually by projects and the general trend of the ecosystem. And we can see here that around November 2017, ETH was only worth around $300. But that's about the time where most of the Ethereum was raised. So during that crazy spike up to $1,400, that was pretty much when most of it was being unloaded. Like there was almost no real ICO raising going on during that bear market or the bull run. So a lot of these projects were able to just collect this Ethereum and pretty much dump it during the craziness during November and December and just make out like complete bandits. So a lot of them are still sitting on Ethereum down where we are now price wise, and those are still unrealized gains, not losses in a lot of these projects' case. So like we can look at a few of the different projects. For instance, Filecoin sold pretty much the vast majority of their Ethereum and are sitting on just what is it, like 25 millions in unrealized gains, or no, unrealized losses for Filecoin. Golem sold around 20 million dollars worth of Ethereum and are still sitting on almost 100 million of unrealized gains in Ethereum. The Digix DAO, which is a gold stable coin, is still sitting on $95 million of unrealized gains. EOS realized, 60 something million, or what is it, 68. Gnosis, the Augur clone, has realized $35 million of gains and is sitting on around $35 million of unrealized gains. The Raiden network, their Lightning Network equivalent, sold pretty much all of their ICO for around $60 million of gains. Like, these guys played this perfectly in terms of just suck in all the money and then dump it when the price started going crazy. And they're sitting on giant cash or more stable crypto reserves. And they still have a bunch of Ethereum left over. Although I do want to point out real quick, Janine, one thing I thought was hysterical is Metronome. All losses. The tiny fraction that they sold was at a loss, and they're almost around 8 million in the hole in terms of unrealized losses. Civic sold most of it at a loss. So they realized a few $1 million of losses versus when they raised.
Just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, Metronome is the token that Jeff Garzik tried to launch, and Civic is Vinny Lingham's token for his, I don't know, KYC identity platform.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so like really like looking at all of the actual coin movement in the treasury wallets for all of these ICOs, like it's the death spiral that a lot of people have been hoping for, such as myself, in terms of the Ethereum price crunching lower and triggering a recursive dumping of ICO holdings by all these projects. It's not going to happen. Like they pretty much played it like a champ and dumped everything for massive gains near the top of Ethereum and are sitting pretty with a lot of cash reserves and still a bunch of Ethereum that realistically for a lot of these projects, like Ethereum could go down way more than it is now, and they would still be sitting on unrealized gains and not actually moving into the territory of losses, with the exception of idiots like Vinny and Jeff, who were too stupid to do the obvious thing.
Well, I just want to, point out if any of these people are, having trouble managing all of these funds and maybe they're thinking that they have to maneuver it around a bit to, escape some jurisdictions. I hear that Vlad Zamfir is very good at doing that.
Oh my God, don't get me started on Vlad. I used to think he was the one sane person in Ethereum, and he has shown himself to be another idiot over the last 6 months.
Well, I mean, you know what makes you look really insane? When you let your employees get drunk and gobble, gobble, gobble around about what they do for work.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think just looking in the story, man, it's like pretty crazy to see all this money being sloshed around like that, and amount of Ethereum tied up and the amount raised by EOS. It's like you think of all those projects, and like EOS is like raised, over twice that. And yeah, I'm kind of curious as to what that play is, because man, I mean, like coming from a part of the country where and a lot of Ethereum guys are, a lot of these EOS guys are showing up, and it is kind of starting to be like some of these blockchain meetups aren't so cordial anymore. These guys are, and but yeah, I know that there's a lot of ETH tied up in that. So, or yeah, we'll see how it goes, I guess.
It's unicorn farts all the way down. And all the way up, too.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So, just a quick touch up on what's going on with Bitmain. So, they have recently acquired a Bcash browser wallet extension called Telescope. And I found this I don't know, kind of strange considering the fact that they've just recently invested in the Opera browser, which has integrated cryptocurrency wallets. And this story has also made me lose faith in humanity because this extension is developed by Aaron Engert, who used to work at IBM and actually has a PhD in computer science. So I think what's going on here right now is Bitmain just kind of trying to scramble around and ensure that there's still wallet software in the event of a split come November. Because when you really look around at a lot of the wallets in the ecosystem, I mean, there's the Bitcoin.com wallet, and Roger has kind of been hedging his bets and not really taking a definitive stance on things. There's the Electron Cash wallet, And then there's a few other wallets that are pretty much all associated with nChain and Craig Wright. So it seems if there is going to be a split, there's going to be a lot of lopsidedness in terms of software that users can actually use to interact with each respective chain. And I think Bitmain's kind of just scrambling and going, "Oh shit, that's a base we need to cover." And so they grab a browser wallet, which is kind of ironic to me because the entire pitch and spiel for Bcash is it's cheap, fast, and reliable, and you can use it for actual merchant payments. So I would think they would be more concerned with having a mobile wallet that users could actually use in the real world for meat space commerce. But given Bitmain's stupidity over the last couple of months, I take that back, last couple of years, it doesn't kind of shock me if this is what they're trying to do here, that they're not thinking it through at all. They're just grabbing whatever they can find off the shelf as fast as possible.
I'm surprised they're trying to prepare for this. Yeah, there's just everybody taking sides, and you got three guys. Yeah, Roger's going to try and hedge his bets, and definitely just run off on his corner. And so John, he's playing this IPO game, and I'm sure that's a big time consumer. But yeah, I'm sure that there's this in the background doing that. Is like, okay, well, we got to be ready. If they do this, we need to do that. So, but yeah, it is like you think they'd have more wallets developed out if it was supposed to be this big merchant service and anybody could use it. Seems like they're more just all about telling you that's that rather than building it out.
Well, I think it's just like Jihan's not really thinking this through. And I mean, like, how this is a huge part of why it was like, no, when they tried to continuously hard fork Bitcoin. Like, you have the software stacks, you have the user base, you have the merchant acceptance, and it's like, where does all of this play out when you just have a sudden split? Like, how is this going to work? And like the fact that you have these two factions digging in on each side in Bcash, and it seems to be not much thought really going into that. It's like this is going to be a shit show. And if Bitmain's just going to grab a fucking wallet extension browser or browser extension wallet and just call it quits, I mean, that's absurd. It's not going to help you going to a shop somewhere with your phone. And also, that's like one of the most insecure ways to manage your keys. Like, you're going to plug it into a browser extension that's hooked into a web browser with a JavaScript engine that's constantly interacting with all kinds of different systems and servers on the internet. Like, that's retarded.
It means style, man. They don't respect your sovereignty. They don't. That's like with it, but kind of makes me wonder. Like, they got all this Bcash sitting on the books. They're not really that worried about it. I mean, like, feels like this fork would kind of cause some trouble for the price, but maybe they're just like got this. So they're just like, well, yeah, it's gonna happen. We're gonna airdrop our stuff, and that'll cover these losses here or there, but we might need some browser extension to move this stuff around. So we better gobble up this telescope. It's kind of I don't know. It's like watching them draw for their drawstring for a parachute. We'll see if something's going to come out and save them.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, though. In other news, which I'm sure Bitfinex is losing his fucking mind over, but I don't know because he blocked me very long ago for simply asking for evidence of anything. Noble Bank International is apparently looking to sell themselves and trying to find a buyer. And for those who don't remember, This is actually one of the banks in Puerto Rico that Tether was using that BitMEX Research actually tracked down, looking at international money flows and kind of putting two and two together, looking at huge inflows into Puerto Rico and specifically this bank in the tune of billions of dollars that was pretty in line with the Tether issuance rate. And one of the differentiating things about this bank is they're not fractional reserve. So their entire business model can't function like a normal bank where you're simply printing money and charging interest and so on. And really, there's kind of a lot of things I want to like dive through and connect the dots on here. Is for a long time, Bitfinex was talking about buying a bank, and like this kind of predates, a lot of the big issues they were having with wire transfers being blocked and so on. Just as like a natural step for any big player in this ecosystem, really, is if you like everything has just always kind of been uncertain with those relationships, it just in general. And really, the one way to remove that uncertainty is to just have your own bank for the fiat side of things. And that's actually how Coinbase deals with a lot of these issues. They use, I forget the name of it, but it's a bank in California owned by Andreessen Horowitz. So there's like Coinbase's fiat side of things is literally a bank owned by a lot of their investors. And you have a lot of that uncertainty removed by that. And so looking at Noble's relationship with Tether, it really kind of makes me wonder if they were kind of trying to take steps in that direction just to be able to get things situated there, have a place to park the money for Tether, and then not have to worry about anything except moving that into Noble Bank, and then Tether can pretty much circulate anywhere seamlessly until somebody would want to redeem it from the bank. But obviously, that's not how things play out. This bank has seen a huge withdrawal of money, and an unnamed source in this Bloomberg article is saying that Bitfinex and Tether are no longer using this bank and have started diversifying Tether funds out to other banks. And we know as of last year, I believe it was, or maybe very early this year, Bitfinex established a banking relationship with ING in Europe. So they've kind of moved past the crux of a lot of the issues they were having in terms of being able or unable to move money around. But Noble Bank was using what was the name? They were using BNY Mellon in New York as the custodian of funds. And Mellon has said that they no longer have a banking relationship with Noble. And so really kind of looking at these pieces here, like this brings up a lot of questions, and it just continues reinforcing my perspective on a lot of the things that have been going on with Tether and Bitfinex and the US government, especially regarding the CFTC subpoena from last year. And it really just seems to me like they're just trying to fuck with this as much as possible with no real basis to do so in terms of criminal activity. Like, and this really looks to me like, reading between the lines, the reason Finex and Tether are not using this bank anymore is because their relationship with their custodian bank in New York was probably cut off to pressure Finex and Tether, which led to them withdrawing and being an outsized amount of this bank's holdings. I think it was something like $200 million was the holdings before Tether capital started flowing in, which is what allowed BitMEX Research to identify this bank and brought their holdings up into the multiple billions of dollars. And it's like, this is not something that's going to go away. And I really have to point at Bitfinex too on Twitter and just ask, why is he so insistent on attacking this company with no evidence whatever, without a shred of proof for a single accusation he has, when you can see all of these moves going on from regulatory agencies to pressure these companies? Like, and really it comes down to incentives in my mind. Like, they just don't want something like Tether existing without their law enforcement backdoors, as we recently saw with another stable coin, without their regulatory compliance, as we've seen with the Gemini stable coin, because you need those fiat flows to play arbitrage moves in this space. Bitcoin can handle the crypto side of things like that, but you still need to arbitrage fiat to close those loops. And things like Tether just completely remove the friction from that and open that aspect of things to pretty much anybody, instead of limiting who can play these arbitrage trades to the people who know people, who can get things moved quickly through the legacy banking system. And they don't like that. So, like, to just point blank, like, I think a lot of this shit is literally just government influenced attempts to cripple and fuck with major businesses in this ecosystem that don't want to play ball. And to reinforce that a little bit, I'll just point, if you go look at Bitfinex's readings and rantings on Twitter, he's very recently started attacking Kraken and Binance now too, with very coincidental timing, or around the time that the New York Attorney General's office started pointing fingers at them and making all kinds of ridiculous speculation about illegal activities on these exchanges when they refuse to comply with their questionnaire. I'll point you back to when we covered that, and literally every single section of the report ended with completely baseless implications that Kraken and Binance and other exchanges who didn't answer must be doing something illegal because they didn't answer us. And like, yeah, like this is something that it happens. It's going to continue happening, but you really need to look. You need to look under the rocks. You need to read between the lines, because they don't put out a headline in the New York Times going, U.S. government fucking with this business because it's out competing them. They don't state it outright like that. They just do things and cover it up with media spin and bullshit. And these are the kinds of things that you actually need to pay attention to in this space.
Bitfinex account, man. Come on. It's like that guy has obviously been working on this motive to get everybody to worry about Tether FUD, like just crazy. I mean, that's, yeah, I've kind of always sort of put it as some sort of government agent, or like a competitive bank or something, to where it's like, yeah, there's somebody with some big agendas there that are controlling that account. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if, this whole Noble BNY Mellon custodial thing had to do with government intervention. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. We're seeing all these stable coins getting released, and we're starting regulation come down with that, where like about it, and how it's, some KYC required. And it's definitely that they're just like aggravated that they have this competition in the space, and kind of can move where it wants, because it's not really regulated to any sort of real physical boundaries, and it can keep moving. And it's interesting. I know that on Liquid too, and which that's supposed to be something like a stable coin to move liquidity across exchanges. So I think yeah, we'll see some. I don't know. I think we're going to continue to see stable coin where we'll see like some of them, kind of be like these, walled gardens, so to speak, where people can arbitrage with this said stable coin in this said geographical location, where you'll have people that are playing the free market and all that. They'll be, using some of these bigger names that have been, time tested. That's been, ability to do what it needs to do as far as like outmaneuver government censorship. So yeah, I mean, like, they're pushing this narrative, but really it's just like, Coinbase trying to say that they're smart with child pay. It's really just showing your cards at this point or your hands. I mean, like, that's the way I think. I hope more people think like that. I mean, I've had this before where it's like, I think most people think like I think, but that's not really. If you're looking at Bitfinex, like they're a real legitimate account and they've actually got, your worry about, what you're doing in this ecosystem at hand. That's not the case. This is some banking or government entity. That's my belief.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now for the shit posters out there, for my brothers and sisters from 4chan. 4chan Pass is now accepting Bitcoin. That's right. Are you sick of dealing with CAPTCHAs? Are you sick of your memes being delayed by stupid puzzles you have to solve? You can now fix this with Bitcoin, everybody. So go on over to 4chan.org/pass and get your shit post on. Yeah.
This was not a paid advertisement, and I was not even aware that we were going to make this advertisement.
Not an advertisement. It is a deliverance of holy news. Something that is going to shape the foundations of the internet.
Is that where all this moth monstrosity originated from?
Bitcoiners can now shitpost efficiently.
Yeah, I need more moth memes. I really like these moth memes, man. They came out of nowhere, but they're funny.
I have a moth meme, but I'm saving it until the end of the show.
Oh, great. I'm looking forward to it.
All memes come from 4chan. It is the mecca of the internet.
Shitty vortex where you get some weird stuff coming out for sure. Yeah. It's powerful memes thrown out of there.
Alrighty though, last bit of stupidity, and then we're calling it a day. I apologize for the bitcoin.com link. You can always just listen to me and not click it, or if anybody can get an archive to actually work, I will replace it instantaneously. But Jesus Christ, the level of complete and utter stupidity when you think it can't get any worse, it gets worse. So Donald Mulders, a man who is not even a programmer, he's just a guy, learned a little bit of HTML and then had an actual developer step in and fix it for him, is trying to put a website on the fucking Bitcoin Cash blockchain using BitDB. That retarded thing we covered a month or two ago where they're trying to use the Bcash blockchain as a general purpose database. Yeah. Because it's not like there's going to be, enough centralization pressures just transacting with Bcash. It's not like the few nodes that can survive are going to be bombarded with shit tons of traffic from SPV wallets trying to get their balances and send transactions. No. We need to make it a general purpose database. We need to turn it into web servers too. These nodes can't just be bombarded with SPV wallets for people spending money. No, they need to be serving Netflix videos. They need to be serving websites. There needs to only be 10 servers on the entire internet that everybody's connecting to for absolutely everything, or Bcash is a failure.
I want my cat food supply chain to be tracked on the blockchain, and I want my cat videos delivered on the blockchain. Because, of course, what else are you going to do with all that empty space?
I want to be able to shop on the blockchain. Fuck it. Like if Bcash is fast, cheap, and reliable money, why can't Amazon be on the Bcash chain too? All I need to do is connect to a node. I can buy my stuff on Amazon. I can send my transaction to the node. I can shit post my memes on it. Like seriously, why does the internet need to be anything except Bcash nodes?
But wait a second, Shinobi, wouldn't that be like a really recursive weirdness where most of the nodes are run on Amazon Web Services, and then if you put Amazon on the Bcash blockchain, it's like it goes in a loop that never ends.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. It's Satoshi's vision. It'll work because Moore's law.
Don't think too hard about it. That is, yeah, what a joke, man. It's, I don't know. Yeah, it was a joke when we talked about it before, but it's like you're thinking about, this is where it's like sometimes the language, when people say like, oh, yeah, censorship resistant website because it's on the blockchain. It's like, but it's going through one of 3 nodes or 4 nodes. Like, it's so easy to shut down. Like, whatever, man. It's all jokes. All it was unicorn farts all the way up and down. Not even unicorn over there, man. Maybe something even a little worse, like just some goat farts or something.
There is no issue with websites, HTML code growing linearly. There is no problem with the fact that new code does not replace the old code and it remains on the blockchain forever. For this is how we shall go to the moon, because we choose to.
Yes, to the moon on the blockchain of cash.
Yeah, okay. I guess, yeah. We got our chuckles in.
You know what
I don't know how much longer my mind can handle increasing stupidity.
You know what I want to store? I want to store a website that collects all of the times that Roger Ver has used the Me Too hashtag improperly.
Oh, man. Oh, what a world we live in.
Alrighty. I guess it is time for final thoughts, and holy shit, we might actually make it under 2 hours.
Heck yeah, man. We've been doing pretty good on time. I just caught this morning, and I thought, yeah, right on. We really should be looking a symbol for the Satoshi, right? Like we got the Bitcoin B. We should probably be, looking to try and figure out, pin down what exactly is the Satoshi symbol, because, it's definitely something that's going to be used a lot. So, this is a tweet from Sir Meow I saw this morning about that, and I think that's a good thing to be thinking about. Maybe I'll be, milling it over a little bit, and quick update on the One Broker website that was seized from the FBI. It's back up, but there's no withdrawals. It's you just go in there and set in a claim, or like put in technical support, or put in a claim. I imagine it would be a while before they get back to you still, but it looks like it's temporarily been unrestricted for we'll see for how long.
Alrighty.
They should have put it on the Bcash blockchain, and that could never be taken down.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just saw this last night, but apparently the meme sharing sphere has been inundated with moths. And I like moths, but the picture that they're using is a bit scary. This is actually a different moth. But I thought it was pretty hilarious because it's a combination of the Nike meme and the moth. Believe in something, even if it's just flying into a fucking light bulb and burning to death. Best one. Just do it. And then the second tweet is just kind of a follow-up. I've been kind of annoying the shit out of people at Google and people working with people at Google and journalists writing about Google. And of course, TechCrunch is basically its entire existence is just a giant shill fest for products that they don't actually evaluate. They just get paid to talk about people stuff, and that's about it. No real journalism. And apparently, I mean, I didn't even know Zach Whitaker was at TechCrunch. I might be getting him confused with a different Zach Whitaker who I thought worked at ZDNet. I might be getting that wrong. But he wrote a piece today about a thing that apparently it's not Google itself, it's the parent company Alphabet, because of course children, they're two separate things and they have no conflicts of interest. But apparently they're working on an app aimed at protecting users from state-sponsored censorship. And what's funny about the article, I mean, obviously anyone reading this who's been paying attention to news about Google would think, well, that's kind of weird because aren't they working on a censored search engine for the Chinese government? Well, I mean, maybe it was too awkward to mention that the Chinese government also engages in DNS tampering, which is what this app is supposed to supposedly protect against. There is no mention of China doing that in this article. They mentioned Turkey and I think Venezuela, but no mention of China, which is like one of the countries that is doing the most DNS tampering as far as I'm aware, and has been in the news that they've been doing it for several years at a number of conferences even. So yeah, I just find it funny that once again, TechCrunch is shelling a product and no due diligence or acknowledgement of the ironic fact that apparently Google is working on a tool to solve a problem that it is in the process of creating.
Oh, goodness.
Well,
TechCrunch.
That's some mighty thick irony. All right. So my last comment for the day is going to be playing a hilarious video for you guys. So everybody stay muted. I'm switching my audio input.
You put the boom boom into my heart. You send my soul sky high when your loving starts. A jitterbug into
What?
Funds are safe.
We're all gonna make it. Oh no. Oh God, no.
Funds are safe.
I need to withdraw my funds.
Funds are safe. 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 Funds are safe.
Grug is rock. Where keep rock?
Rocks are safe.
Rocks are safe.
You put the boom boom into my heart. You send my soul sky high when your loving starts. A jitterbug into my brain.
My funds are safe.
Bang, bang, till my feet do the same.
All right, everybody. Now that we're done with the video from 4chan, toodaloo. See you guys on Sunday.
For everyone.